Welcome back to another coffee mug story brought to you by Goodbye Cycles, where we tell a unique story that's from the point of view of a coffee mug. And today's story is brought to you by a coffee mug that gets to ride on the dash of an ambulance, carried by a paramedic who's seen both beautiful and the dark side of life. This one is titled Head Through. Let's ride into it. I've been with this paramedic now for 11 years. Long enough to know that the world doesn't break evenly. Some people wake up to gentle mornings, warm kitchens, the quiet days. Others wake up to sirens, trauma shears, and the kind of memories that sit heavy on their chest while they're asleep. I just ride shotgun. I'm always on the dash, stack of against run reports, rubber bands. For some reason, Paul keeps swearing he's going to throw them away, but the ball just keeps getting bigger. I sit here on this dash and I smell faintly. Honestly, I smell myself every now and then a diesel fuel, which comes from the vents. And it's never quite pointed in the right direction. But I'm still up front proudly because a paramedic's mug, or at least that's what we tell ourselves. We brag on the fun calls. A lady who swallowed her gum and thought it was a heart attack. The old man who locked himself outside in his underwear. Kitten stuck in a tree that scratched Kristen so hard she had to get a tetanus shot. Those are the calls that we get to laugh about in the station kitchen. Those are the easy days. But the story I'm about to tell you is one where I fell out of the truck. I spilled into an alleyway that was sprayed of blood, and it has carved itself into the memory of everybody on the truck that day. It all started at a perfect 72 degrees. The smell of the wind coming through the trees as they're changing color. The wind chimes. Sat there. Paul was just drinking his black coffee. Lukewarm like always. He always liked to drop a couple ice cubes in before he poured the coffee in. While a firefighter tried to explain why he believed squirrels were working for the government. Kristen sat there on the floor in the bay, boots off, rubbing her feet. She had a long night. Then, all of a sudden, the tone dropped. Not the soft tones of fall. Not the clipped tones for chest pain. Those tones came sharp enough to slice through the whole building. The call came from dispatch. Child struck by vehicle, severe trauma. Units respond immediately. The world froze. Adults hit by cars usually survive. Kids, they just don't have the body mass to survive. Paul tossed out the last sip of coffee, grabbed his gear, jumped in the truck, grabbed the trauma bag, airway kit, monitor oxygen, threw me into the truck. Habit, perhaps superstition, but I always went on every ride. We flew through the city, through the red lights, horns, Kristen cursing out drivers who hesitated even for a half a second. I heard enough radio chatter to know this one was going to be bad. Witness screaming, mentions of blood, and then the words that chilled even me. He hit the windshield hard. When the ambulance swung into the street, Kristen backed too hard. I went flying. I fly out of Paul's hand, out the open door, onto the asphalt, landed sideways, handle scraping the concrete. But from that angle, I could see everything. There was a row of glass company trucks behind this alley entrance, white vans loaded with windshields. It was the perfect blind corner. And the boy? Later we learned his name was Joe. He shot out of the alley on his BMX bike like a rocket. Never even saw the car. Went to turn and he took the car head on. The car never saw him. The bike went under the bumper and the windshield had this hole in it. This crater. This impact. Glass was pushed inward. He just lay twisted. His leg bent in a way even hardened medics looked away. In his head, his scalp ran red like a bucket of red paint had been dumped on it. Head wounds bleed more than people think. And this one looked unstoppable. I could see Paul sprinting, sliding past, like sliding into a base, scraping his knees. Didn't matter. He just wanted to get to that kid as quick as possible. Dug his hands right into the wound, trying to find that artery to pinch it, to close it. Kristen was already opening up package. And then you could hear Joe whisper, just barely audible. What did Joe say? How's my bike? And Paul, he almost laughed. Just stay with me. It wasn't fine. It wasn't fine. The truth doesn't help in moments like that, though. They moved fast. Trauma dressings, C-collar, backboard, splint for the leg, which didn't resemble a leg anymore, but they splinted it in. Less than 4 minutes. That's all it took to get him loaded. It was less than 4 minutes by the time I hit the concrete and Joe was on the back of the ambulance. Though, watching it, it felt like more like 4 hours. Time just has a way of standing still. Paul grabbed me, threw me in. I think it was more instinct catching me out of the corner of his eye, because I can't imagine why a coffee mug would matter in a moment like that. But I did. I ended up in the truck. Kristen drove like she was trying to outrun time itself. In the back, Paul shouted vitals into the radio. 14-year-old male, head trauma, major scalp, LAC, femur fracture, GCS fluctuating. When we hit the trauma bay, he vanished behind the curtain. Blue gowns, people shouting orders, and then it was just quiet. The crushing, heavy kind. That kind of quiet that follows a big storm. Everybody's back at the station. Nobody was joking. Nobody bragged. Nobody complained. Paul washed his uniform twice. The stain didn't come out. Not fully. Kristen stopped listening to music in the mornings. The rig, it felt heavier inside. And so did I. But Joe was a strong kid. He survived. A couple weeks later, Paul and Kristen drove by his house and decided to stop. They didn't need to say it out loud, but I think they needed the validation to know that their work mattered. And when the door swung open, they saw him, or rather a rebuilt version of him. I could hear it, them talking. Over 300 stitches across his forehead, across his face and head. Like a pink scar from his forehead, lacing around his crown. Leg in a brace, aluminum crutches, an upgrade. And he was smiling. And you could hear Joe say, "Hey, you were the guys that saved me." Kristen said, "Hey, how you feeling, buddy?" And Joe, "Well," he said, "I get to skip swimming the whole semester. So, it ain't so bad." And he said it with this way that surviving being launched through the windshield of an oncoming car getting hit was just a little inconvenience. Like the real victory was getting out of freshman swimming class. And his mother stepped forward, eyes tired, voice trembling. "You saved our son." Not in a praise, just as truth too heavy for her to hold alone. On the drive back, Paul rested his hand on me, the windows down. Kristen, for the first time in a long time, turned the radio on and started singing, and the world felt balanced again. I've gone on many roads since then with this rig, but I'll never forget the blood. I'll never forget the silence at the trauma bay. Some stories like this aren't for bragging. Some stories just remind you why the sirens exist at all. And I'm just a cracked, chipped, and stained, still riding shotgun. Carry that story forever. So, thanks for listening or watching on YouTube, however you're getting this podcast from. Goodbye Cycles. We appreciate it. Again, if you're looking for a good certified used bicycle or you're in the mood to buy some bike parts, just go to goodbyecycle.com and check out. And if you're listening to this on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, stay tuned for the audible explanation. And if you're watching this on YouTube, check us out on wherever you get your podcasts, because the audible version to the real life story of how this went down is pretty awesome. Thanks again.